So you've been going to these networking events for months, maybe years now, and you keep hearing how it's the best way to grow your business. But there is this problem because you also find yourself dreading these events and wondering if all those business cards you are collecting are actually worth the time you're investing. Well, both perspectives are valid depending on your situation, but I don't think either of these viewpoints are addressing the fundamental issue of what actually makes business relationships valuable and how to cultivate them in the most efficient way possible. I think that the traditional networking approach kind of misses the mark as to what makes business development so powerful in certain contexts and incredibly draining in others. And again, it depends on who you are and what you're trying to accomplish. So in today's video, I'm going to show you exactly why podcasting might be the networking alternative you've been looking for and how it can help you build deeper relationships with prospects without the awkward small talk. I'll cover everything from how podcasting lets you build relationships at scale rather than one at a time, why being a podcast host immediately positions you differently than being just another person asking for business, and how podcast content keeps working for you long after the conversation ends. So, if you're tired of forced networking conversations that go nowhere and you want a more authentic way to connect with potential clients and partners, I think you'll find this video incredibly valuable. I'll break down each section so it's easy for you to implement this strategy even if you've never recorded a single podcast episode before. Before we talk about how podcasting can transform your approach to business development, let's get real about traditional networking for a minute. You know the drill, right? You put on your business casual attire, grab a stack of business cards, and head off to some hotel conference room or restaurant after hours. You're there to connect with other professionals, but let's be honest about what's actually happening. First off, these events are incredibly time intensive. You might spend 2, 3, 4 hours at an event to maybe have 4 or 5 meaningful conversations if you're lucky. And that's assuming the event is even in your city. For a lot of us, networking means travels, maybe hotels, and time away from family, or even other work that needs your attention. And then there is this awkward dynamic that nobody really talks about. You're there to ultimately generate business, right? But you can't actually say that because it would be too pushy. So instead, we all play this strange game where we pretend we're just there to connect, while simultaneously trying to qualify if the person we're talking to could eventually become a client. It's exhausting, and most people can sense when they're being sized up as prospects. And let's not forget the elephant in the room. Once these conversations are over, they're basically gone forever. Sure, you might jot down some notes later or connect on LinkedIn, but the actual content and value of those conversations just evaporates. And then comes the follow-up emails that most people don't respond to because they get dozens like it after every networking event. And perhaps the biggest issue for many business owners is the scale problem. You can only be in one place at a time, talking to one person at a time. And there's a hard ceiling on how many relationships you can develop this way. Oh, and I haven't even mentioned the status imbalance yet. If you're trying to connect with people who are at a higher level than you in your industry, real decision makers, the influencers, right? Well, good luck getting their attention at a networking event. They're either not there at all or they're surrounded by people vying for their attention. So when you add it all up, the time commitment, the geographical limitations, the awkward sales but not sales conversations, the difficulty in scaling, and the challenge of connecting with higher level prospects, traditional networking starts to look like a pretty inefficient way to grow your business. But what if there was a way to flip this entire dynamic around? What if instead of you chasing potential clients and partners, they came to you? What if you could build relationships with dozens of ideal prospects in the time it takes to attend one networking event? That's where podcasting comes in. And it might just change how you think about business development forever. So now that we've covered why traditional networking can be such a grind, let's shift into how podcasting completely transforms this dynamic. Unlike traditional networking where you're limited to one conversation at a time, a podcast lets you connect with hundreds or even thousands of people simultaneously. Every time someone listens to your show, they're essentially spending 30 minutes or more with you, hearing your thoughts, perspectives, and expertise. And the great thing about this is that you only have to show up and record once. But there's something even deeper happening psychologically when people listen to podcasts. They'll start to feel like they really know you, even though they've never met you. And there's actually science behind this. When someone listens to your voice in their earbuds while they are working out, commuting, or doing chores, they develop what psychologists call a parasocial relationship. They feel connected to you, even though the relationship is one-sided. And it's powerful, and it creates a foundation of familiarity and trust that might take months to develop through traditional networking. Then there is the depth of connection. In a typical networking event, you might chat with someone for 10, maybe 15 minutes, and you're probably sticking to surface level topics. Compare that to a podcast conversation, where you might spend 30, 45, or even 60 minutes diving deep into someone's expertise, challenges, and vision. You're not just exchanging pleasantries anymore. You're having the kind of meaningful conversation that actually creates a real relationship. And lastly, something that might be the most powerful aspect of all, the positioning shift. When you reach out to someone asking for a meeting or trying to network, you're essentially requesting their time and attention. But when you invite someone to be a guest on your podcast, you're offering them something valuable. You're offering them a platform, visibility, and the opportunity to share their message. You immediately shift from being a person asking for something to a person offering something. And let me tell you, this completely changes how people respond to you. I mean, which email would you be more likely to respond to? Hey, can I have 30 minutes of your time to tell you about my services? Or, hey, I host a podcast about X and I'd love to feature you as a guest to share your expertise on Y. The answer is pretty obvious. This brings me to the status transformation. When you're the host of a show, you're no longer just another business owner or a service provider. You're a media platform. And this subtle shift changes everything about how potential clients and partners perceive you. You become someone who can offer exposure and connection, not just someone selling something. In fact, I've seen business owners gain access to people through their podcasts that they never could have reached through traditional networking channels. And finally, there is the compound effect of content that lives forever. Unlike networking conversation that ends when you walk away, podcast episodes continue working for you indefinitely. That great interview you did 2 years ago is still out there, still being discovered, still building relationships on your behalf even while you sleep. So your content becomes an asset that appreciates over time, not an event that's here and then gone. This is where the rubber meets the road and where podcasting truly becomes your most powerful networking tool. The foundation of this strategy is pretty straightforward. You create a podcast specifically designed to feature the exact people you want to build relationships with. I'm talking about your dream clients, potential strategic partners, industry influencers, or even those higher level decision makers who'd normally be hard to reach. But there is an important mindset shift here that you need to embrace. This isn't about creating a thinly veiled sales pitch disguised as a podcast. That approach falls flat really quickly. Instead, you want to create a podcast concept that genuinely serves your business but isn't directly about it. So, what does that look like in practice? Well, let's say you are a marketing agency for healthcare providers. Instead of creating the healthcare marketing show, where you will end up talking about your services, you might create a healthcare innovators podcast where you interview successful healthcare leaders about their broader business challenges and victories. And the big difference there is that the second concept allows you to connect with ideal clients while creating content that's actually valuable and not just self-promotional. Once you've got your concept, you need to focus on creating genuine value for your guests. Remember, the goal here is to flip the traditional networking dynamic by offering something valuable rather than asking for something. Your podcast gives guests visibility, a platform to share their expertise, and content they can use in their own marketing. This value is what opens the door to meaningful relationships. Now, during the interview itself, focus on having a genuine, curious conversation, not steering things toward your services. The magic of this approach is that when you give someone space to share their expertise and experiences, they naturally become more receptive to learning about you as well. The relationship develops organically through conversation rather than through a forced pitch. And the final piece of this strategy is your follow-up system. After recording, don't just publish the episode and move on. Send personalized thank you notes. Share insights you gleaned from the conversation. Connect your guests with other relevant people in your network. Look for opportunities to add value beyond the podcast itself. All these touch points will keep the relationship warm and open the door for natural business conversations down the line. What makes this approach so powerful is that it completely reframes the networking dynamic. Instead of trying to extract value from new connections, you are creating value first. Instead of asking for time, you're offering exposure. And instead of forcing business conversations, you are creating the conditions where those conversations happen naturally because people already know, like, and trust you. So that's the guest first strategy in a nutshell. If you're using podcasting as a business development strategy, you need to completely reframe how you think about success metrics. When most people start a podcast, they get fixated on download numbers. They think they need thousands of listeners for this to be worth their time. But that's not actually true for this strategy. Because remember, we are not using podcasting primarily as a mass marketing channel here. We are using it as a relationship building tool. So while traditional podcasters might obsess over growing from 1,000 to 10,000 downloads, you might be building incredibly valuable business relationships with just 200 listeners a month if they are the right 200 people. So what should you be tracking instead? The number one indicator is meaningful follow-up conversations that happen after podcast episodes. Are guests staying in touch? Are they responding to your emails? Are those conversations naturally progressing toward business discussions? You should also track the conversion rate of guests to clients, partners, or referral sources, although that might take longer to measure. Another key metric is whether you are gaining access to higher level decision makers than before. Are you now able to have conversations with the VP or C-suite when previously you could only reach middle management? That's another huge win, even if it hasn't translated to revenue yet. You will also want to pay attention to inbound inquiries from people in your guests' network. This is often the real beauty of this approach. Someone listens to their colleague or friend on your show, hears the value in the conversation, and reaches out to you directly. These warm introductions typically convert at a much higher rate than cold outreach. So that's why the whole "you need to network to grow your business" conversation is pretty short-sighted as far as I'm concerned. Traditional networking certainly has its place, but when you compare it to what podcasting can do for your business relationships, it's clear which approach gives you more leverage and better results with less awkwardness and time investment. For me, podcasting has offered an amazing alternative for the aspects of business development that I care most about, which is building genuine relationships, positioning myself as an authority, and creating content that works for me around the clock rather than just during a single event. I don't have to force awkward conversations, I don't have to travel to events just to hand out business cards, and I don't have to compete for attention in crowded rooms with dozens of other people trying to do the exact same thing. And when you add it all up, the scale advantages, the positioning benefits, the relationship depth, and the long-term content value, podcasting simply delivers a better return on your networking investment than traditional approaches. It's not that traditional networking has no place. It absolutely can work in certain contexts, but for most B2B businesses trying to connect with decision makers, the guest-first podcast strategy is just more efficient and effective across the board. Think about where you could be 1 year from now if you started implementing this approach. You might have 50 episodes under your belt, which means 50 meaningful conversations with ideal clients, partners, and industry influencers. That's 50 people who now know you, like you, trust you, and might be ready to do business with you or refer you to someone who needs your services. And unlike traditional networking, those 50 conversations are still working for you, being discovered by new potential clients every single day. So, with that said, I hope you found this video informative, and if you're actively planning to launch your own podcast as a business development tool and want professional help putting together your concept, your strategy, and your execution plan, check out my website at matteotrovato.com. I also have a free podcast planning guide specifically designed for B2B businesses looking to use podcasting as a networking alternative, and you can download it right now to get the process started. So with that said, if you found this helpful, make sure to like this video and subscribe for more B2B growth strategies. I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.